Hey everybody, Dwayne from Justice 316 here. Just pulling out of Speedway. I just came out of the bathroom in there, and from the evidence I was able to gather, it appears that someone felt the need to take a can of Vienna sausages into the bathroom and consume them in the bathroom. So I love Vienna sausages. I can't fault the person there. I've never taken them to the bathroom to eat them, but you know, to each their own. I'm sure the person paid for it before they went in there the bathroom and ate it. I mean, I can't imagine someone would steal them. Not in this day and age. Anyway, I wanted to talk about, I said before I was going to talk a little bit more about the tribe of Joseph, the tribe of Ephraim. When it comes to the modern state of Israel, a lot of Christians I've seen, especially if you go on X, you see the pro-Israel posts, and people will say, Israel is proof. The modern state of Israel and God bringing the Jews back to Israel is proof that God keeps his promises. Well, okay, but to me it seems like it's proof that God keeps about 1/4 of his promises, not 100%, because he only brought back 3 tribes. Every Jew on earth today claims that their ancestry comes from either the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Benjamin, or the tribe of Levi. That's it. There were 9 other tribes, 13 if you break up Joseph into Manasseh and Ephraim, that are not Jews today, that do not count among the people that were brought back to Israel. And the Old Testament promises of God bringing Israel back 100% included all the tribes of Israel, not just 3. He brought back the southern kingdom of Judah, if you want to put it in those terms. He did not bring back the kingdom of Israel at all. So it's just more cherry picking of what people want to see. Everyone wants the Bible prophecies to be fulfilled in their day and age. Everyone wants to be the generation that gets to see the book of Revelation come to pass. For what reason, I don't know, because the book of Revelation describes some horrific things happening. Why people want to see that, your guess is as good as mine. But every single generation thinks that they're the generation that's going to see the sun become black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon become as blood, and the mountains and rocks fall out of their places, and people scream to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath has come, and who shall be able to stand? I really don't want that to happen in my lifetime, and I'm not seeing any evidence that it's going to, but everyone wants to think that it's going to happen in their lifetime. So they turned this thing about Israel becoming a country in 1948. They said that's what it is. When Jesus said, this generation shall not pass until all these things be fulfilled, he wasn't talking about the current generation he was talking to. He was talking about the generation that sees all these things come to pass. That'll all happen in one generation. So then we were told, okay, so it has to happen in the generation of when Israel became a country again. That's the generation where all these things are going to happen. So Israel became a country again in 1948. Generation in the Bible is pretty much noted as 40 years being a generation. That's how long the Israelites wandered in the desert, 40 years, so that generation could all die off, and that their children could inherit the promised land. So 40 years is a generation according to the Bible. So what happened was, you had this guy wrote this book. I have no idea what his name is, but I remember as a kid, this book said 88 reasons why God's coming back in 1988. And one of the reasons was because 1988 was 40 years after 1948. So that's the same generation, you know, one day after 1988, then that generation's over. So God can't come back after that. Jesus can't come back at that point. He's got to come in 1988 for that prophecy to be fulfilled. Well, 1988 came and went. Jesus did not come back. There was no third temple built. So then it became, well, that just means that there's going to be people alive who were alive in 1948 when they see that bought them some more time. Now there are going to be people, you know, alive that were living in 1948 when Israel became a country. Something about the fig tree. When you see the fig tree, then you know that summer is drawing. When fig tree bears fruit, you know that summer is drawing nigh. So just when you see these signs, you know that the time is near. And they take that, the fig tree is automatically Israel for some reason. The Bible doesn't say that, but somebody figured that out, some genius. So now the current thing is, well, it's going to be people who were alive in 1948 are still going to be alive when all the end times prophecies come to pass. Well, 1948 is starting to get back there in time. And pretty soon, I don't want to say pretty soon, there's still a lot of people alive who are alive in 1948. I love old people, but they're not going to live forever. and there's going to come a time, not that far from this time right now, that nobody who was alive in 1948 is going to be alive on this earth. So then what do you do? Well, I can tell you right now what they're going to do. Bookmark this, save this video. They're going to say, well, a generation isn't 40 years. A generation means something else. It means a time span, an indefinable time span. And they're going to change the definition of what a generation is. I can just tell you right now. That's the only way they get out of this. So originally a generation was 40 years, so it had to happen before 1988 came and went. Well, now it's going to be the generation of, it's going to be people, they could be 120 years old if they live that long. That's still the generation. Once that comes and goes, then the definition of a generation is going to be changed. Anything they got to do to try to shoehorn this modern day garbage that was started in the middle 1800s into making some kind of logical sense, they're going to do it. So the definition of a generation will be changed when the last person who was alive in 1948 passes away. That's my prediction. You can write it down. It's going to happen, I guarantee it. So let's talk about the 12 tribes. Okay. One of the most important of the 12 tribes, I don't want to say one's more important than the other, but Jacob had a favorite son, and his favorite son was Joseph. He made no bones about it. He let everybody know that Joseph was his favorite kid. And the Bible says that even though Joseph was not his oldest son, who would normally get the birthright, which means they get a double portion of the father's wealth, and they get to carry the line of the father's name. So even though Ishmael was the oldest son of Abraham, God didn't choose Ishmael, God chose Isaac. So Abraham chose Isaac and gave him the blessing of the birthright to carry on the name of Abraham. Isaac in turn had two sons, Esau and Jacob. Esau was his favorite son, and he wanted to give Esau the birthright blessing, but Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of soup, and he lost his blessing because Jacob deceived his father and made him think he was Esau. So Isaac thought he was blessing Esau when in fact he was giving the birthright blessing to Jacob. So Jacob became the standard bearer of the family. Jacob carried on the line of Isaac. So Jacob has 12 sons, and Jacob's oldest son ended up having sex with one of Jacob's concubines, technically one of his wives, his stepmom. Kind of yucky, I understand. So, I can understand not wanting to give the birthright to a son like that. Jacob had a favorite son, which was Joseph, his second to youngest son. And in the book of Chronicles, it very clearly lays out that Joseph received the birthright. And if you look at the blessings that Jacob gives to all his sons, when you get to the one about Joseph, he talks a lot about material blessings. Joseph is a fruitful bough. Everything is about fruit and bearing fruit and signs of plenty and good things. So Joseph got the birthright, which means he gets a double portion of the wealth of the father, and he carries on the line of his father's name. So the line of Jacob is to be carried on through Joseph, okay? Now, it did say the ruler would come from Judah, one of his other sons. It said, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh come. That's talking about Jesus. The ruler, the king, is Jesus, and he did come from the tribe of Judah. But the material blessings, and certainly the blessings that God promised to Abraham, they don't go to who becomes the ruler, they go to who the birthright goes to. And the birthright went to Joseph, and Joseph had two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, and once again the younger son gets the favor over the older son. So Ephraim became the standard bearer and the bearer of the name of Joseph. This was chosen by God. Jacob actually did this and moved his hands. Instead of putting his right hand on Manasseh's head, he put his right hand on Ephraim's head and said he's going to be, the more important. So the birthright of Joseph went to Ephraim. And in the tribe of Ephraim in the Bible is a very important tribe. It's the one that Joshua came from. The successor to Moses didn't come from the tribe of Judah. He came from the tribe of Ephraim. And Ephraim is the most important tribe within the northern kingdom of Israel, which split off from the southern kingdom of Judah. And then Ephraim and all his brothers in the northern kingdom, the 9 tribes, were taken captive by the Assyrians, and they ended up being scattered to the 4 winds of the earth, scattered to many countries, scattered to many religions, scattered just in general, and their identity was lost. However, their DNA still remains intact. Those descendants of Joseph and his brothers that aren't Judah and Levi and Benjamin still exist, but they're not Jews. They're Christians, they're Muslims, they're Hindus, they're atheists, they're Wiccans, they're pagans, who knows? But they aren't Jewish. But the Jewish people have moved into the land of Israel that was created in 1948, and they say this is proof that God keeps his promises. Is it? It sounds like God only keeps his promises about 25%, because only 25% of the tribes were brought back to Israel and brought back to the land. The rest of them, as far as the Jews are concerned, they are goyim. As far as the Jews are concerned, the descendants of Ephraim and Manasseh and Naphtali and Gad and Asher and Issachar and Zebulun are Gentiles, and they have no part in Judaism. They have no part in the promises of God, which is totally contrary to everything that God has ever said. But that's the way that Jews see it today. And if you're an evangelical Christian that goes along with this idea that the Jews of today in Israel are God's chosen people, then you're okay with cutting out 3/4 of the tribes of Israel and saying that they're not God's chosen people, because that's the way the Jews see them. So there can't be some big significant prophetic thing about creating the state of Israel in 1948 if 3/4 of the tribes of Israel never came there and started any country. The promises to bring back the children of Israel to the land of Israel were to all of the children of Israel, the northern and the southern tribes. So something's a little off here. It almost sounds like people are trying to just cherry pick certain events and shoehorn them into biblical prophecy and make them fit. Like, I don't even want to get into all the examples of the times that I've heard Bible prophecy be related to helicopters and tanks and cell phones, smartphones and computers and spaceships and all this stuff. You don't know what prophecy is talking about when it's mentioning things in the future. You can't shoehorn modern day stuff into that. Just stop it. God didn't want you to try to figure out. God didn't give you some kind of grand puzzle and bless you with the ability to figure it all out. You mapped it all out on a big whiteboard with markers, and God put a big giant set of parentheses in the 70 weeks of Daniel. All say, here's a week and half of that week, and then 2,000 years in the middle of it. Hang on, let me hit my pause button on my Nintendo and go get a snack for 2,000 years, and then I'll come back and finish the game. God doesn't work like that. It doesn't make any sense because it's nonsensical. So that's my rant for today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like and subscribe, and be prepared to hear more of my ramblings and my disturbed thoughts. I'm not always going to talk about biblical prophecy, but this is the stuff that's been gnawing at me lately. I'll get to more happy subjects soon, but see you later.